The dust is settling. The Pacers look mostly built. What players on the team now have the biggest questions facing them for the coming season, whether it's on the court, with their contract, or for the team's long-term future? Rhett Bauer and I dive into all of that today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Happy Wednesday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes, and today, diving in, looking ahead at the next season for the Pacers by identifying which players on the roster have the biggest questions surrounding them for whatever reason. Are they in a new role? With Tyrese Haliburton having departed, is their starting spot in question? With Miles Turner having departed, how much different is their role going to be, given the new look structure and potentially short-term goals of the team? And of course, from long-term team building perspectives, there's so much to get into. Couldn't do that alone. Rhett Bauer is going to join us today to tackle all of that. We probably get into half the roster in some way or another, but really focusing on, I'd say, 4, 5, maybe 6 guys. Really great discussion with Rhett. Let's just get right to it. The Pacers have 15 players. They have a team that mostly makes sense. They might be done for the offseason. Their rotation looks fairly set, and yet 2 starters gone. Backup center for most of the whole last season is gone. Still significant changes coming next year for the Pacers, and I want to talk about the players on the roster, in the rotation, whatever you want to call it, who will have the biggest questions heading into next year, whether it's about how they'll play, what their rotation spot will be, what it means for the future of the team, or so many other things about the Pacers who suddenly have a much different outlook than they did 17 days ago. And I can't do it alone. Finally, after ducking me earlier in free agency because you have a family for some reason, it's Rhett Bauer. He's back. Rhett, hello. I'm sorry that I am not a member of your family and cannot have you on call to talk to me about these important Pacers topics.
No, it's okay. You said I have a family for some reason. We're not going to get into those reasons. That's a podcast for another conversation. But
today we're talking about big questions about Rhett's family. No,
yes, there are some, but no, we don't need to be getting into that. So very excited to be here. Almost as excited as the Summer League crowd when Johnny Furphy detonated on one of the best posters, I think, that's probably in the last 5 years or so.
It was funny because on the broadcast, Tom Crean was like, Jim, talking to Jim Boeheim, he's like, Jim, you've been to a lot of summer leagues. Like, can you remember a better dunk than that? And my initial reaction was like, I don't think I can remember any summer league dunks. And I've been to a few. So I was like, does that mean there haven't been any good ones? Or does that just mean I have a bad memory? But then I thought again, I'm like, I will definitely remember that dunk. Like if someone asks about summer league dunks, you're like, oh, remember that Furphy dunk? That was crazy. So I'm sure I'm missing some. Like I have a clip bookmarked on my Twitter of Isaiah Jackson, like dunk, block a 3 dunk. That was crazy. But none of the dunks were like, that was just insane. It was just insane.
The picture too, that face, he will like. It does not matter how good he ends up being. He will not live down that face.
And they're in Black Pavilion, like the media and photography seating are like right next to the court. The Pacers photographer is just right there. Oh, excellent stuff. Okay, what are we actually here to talk about? I already said it. Big players facing big questions. There's going to be multiple new starters for the Pacers this year. Multiple new rotation players, young guys sliding into bigger / ready for bigger roles. I will let you go first, Rhett. Player you have big questions about for the team, whether it's their role this year, their long-term future, where they're headed. Go.
What does it look like for Andrew Nembhard to be the lead point guard?
Ooh, I also am very intrigued by this. Yeah, it's funny because how often have we heard that, right? Going into free agency periods for him or extension times of like, well, he could get this much money if he was the lead ball handler somewhere else. Okay, let's see it, right?
Yep. Yeah, especially because, I think it's so funny Monday morning quarterbacking these extensions where, I think John Hollinger of The Athletic was talking about how the Pacers didn't need to do the extension last year and that it was kind of goofy. It was like, why would you give up that extra year? But now it's like, holy shoot, if you had to use give him an extension now, knowing that he's going to have a year of being a starter, like you would be at a pretty disadvantageous position to do that. And so getting him under that contract, getting him locked up, and now you get to see what he does. So I don't know what that's going to do and what the trickle down effects of that's going to be, but I'm very, very interested to find out.
John was actually one of the few critics of that extension, not because of the contract itself, but the timing, which is funny given how this Pacers offseason is gone. It'll be funny to go back on that in a year. Like, if he looks incredible as an initiator this year, he's going to be worth way over $18 million on the open market. And that's when he would have been an unrestricted free agent. So it will depend, obviously, how this year goes. But obviously, yeah, some huge questions about that, because the reason that pops up as a thing for him is, one, he's had like a few mega games in his career, the Warriors game, the Lakers game, and then those two just like wow games against the Celtics in the conference finals 2 years ago, right? So everybody realizes like, okay, as a point guard, he has done awesome things, but also because the Pacers haven't been like clearly awesome at any point with Haliburton out, but they've like stayed afloat and they have good players, obviously, but him playing the one is not just like a death sentence. Haliburton's way better. So they know, we all know, we've seen him play point guard steadily before, but it's usually like 7 games here, 6 games there, right? Maybe if he's lucky, or if you want to call it lucky, like 15 games in a row there. And so there hasn't really been like a full season of development and connection with other players and situations. And on one hand, I'm looking forward to seeing it. On the other hand, with no Miles Turner, it's like, man, this is going to be like a lot of new learning for him. And who knows if this starting line, does it actually matter when Haliburton comes back? Like, obviously it'd be better for him to learn better initiating skills and things like that. So I'll be very curious on 2 things about this. One, again, how good he actually looks in the role. If he looks great, the only thing that hurts for the Pacers is that he won't be playing that role the year after. It'll help his trade value. It'll make him a better player. And what of those skills that come at the one transfer to a different role when Haliburton does come back, because it's not a bad thing to be better at skills, but he won't be doing them as much. So I also am very curious what that looks like for him and how the Pacers kind of balance those 2 things of like, we need you to be good at these things this year, but also like probably not as important if you're good at them the year after this.
Right. It's like there's almost a question about the entire roster. Is like, what is this roster's identity this season?
Yeah.
It's like you really have no idea. What does an Andrew Nembhard-led team with Isaiah Jackson starting center, what does that even look like? I have no idea.
We will get to that. We will get to that part of this. Continue.
Sorry, shouldn't write off Tony Bradley, playoff starter or playoff key centerpiece. But it's just going to be really, really fascinating to see how he handles being what I assume is the lead ball handler without a doubt.
As many reps as you want, Mr. Nembhard. Run some pick and rolls, make something happen. I think that is, of course, among the biggest learning points this year. And in fact, I thought for sure one of our first 3 guys would be the other starting backcourt member. And so I will just take that bait now, because their starting backcourt is going to be 2 players that have started very often before, but never in these roles, and very rarely at the same time in these roles, right? A lot of Bennedict, I'm mentioning Bennedict Mathurin, who I should have just said his name. Like, he was, as a starter last year, the Pacers were good, right? I advocated that he should keep starting, and then Aaron Nesmith was better than he's ever been to close the season, and that was the wrong thing to say. But he was very good as a starter at the 3 last year. He played next to Nembhard and Haliburton, and Mathurin was good. Mostly, I thought, because the defense of that lineup was great, right? They were still getting stops at a pretty good level with those guys on the floor. The offense kind of came and went. Now, by the time he did get benched, that starting 5 was on like a month-long run of like, well, they're finding success not necessarily on the back of this lineup, but the team is winning, and Mathurin is doing well without having to have the ball all the time. So we've seen him do well in the starting 5. We've seen him do well next to Andrew Nembhard. Never in these specific contexts for these players. So I finally got a stat to pull up because I'm stupid. First of all, Pacers were 4-4 last year when Nembhard played and Haliburton did not. Mathurin is not only interesting because he'll be playing a different role than he did last year as a starter, but also because of all the millions of questions that have come up without him entering this offseason, in this offseason, and this season starts. Maybe this sounds different if he gets extended before the season. I would put not super high on odds on that, as I said earlier this week. But what is this season like for him, right? If he is sensational, the Pacers should want to keep him, obviously, but are they going to want to keep him in the same role? Like, if he is awesome at the 2, that's Andrew Nembhard's spot when Haliburton comes back. Is he so good that they want to move Nembhard to the bench? Like, that would be Not surprising necessarily if he's awesome, but like that would not be the projection that the Pacers have had for their own lineups. Would they move Nesmith to the bench again? If you're talking about fit between Haliburton and Siakam, Nembhard and Nesmith, part of the reason the Pacers have been so good is they're close to the dream fits you'd want at those spots. So Mathurin has to be better than those guys to the point that you stop asking about fit, right? So that's part one of this. And part two of this is if he stinks, he's due for a contract next year. If he's awesome, that's great. You pay him, you keep him, he's good. But then you have questions about how much are you paying a guy who's not going to be playing the same role? What's your team actually look like? I know I've run through a lot of these questions before, and it's been very smart of the Pacers that a lot of their contract situations have ended up in a situation where the answer to the question is play it out on the court, let the basketball decide. That's the easiest way to decide. You don't have to let the market decide like it did with Turner. You don't like it when that happens, as you see why. So in this, like Mathurin's a restricted free agent next year. Like in the worst case scenario, they just have to pay him a lot of money. Like that's not a bad thing, but I just have a lot of questions about what this is, right? What does he look like next to Nembhard when he's going to have more responsibilities? What growth steps does he take that, like Nembhard, apply to the Pacers 2 years from now? How much are the Pacers willing to pay for what he does in a role that likely, maybe it will be, is his long-term role? I know I've kind of hashed a lot of these out in off-season preview stuff, but now that we're actually talking about the basketball court part of it, I think it's very fascinating to know that all the questions about him will be settled by how he actually plays basketball in his fourth season. And hey, a lot of guys who came in with similar situations last year, Josh Giddey, Cam Thomas, Jonathan Kuminga, are not having a fun time right now, right? Keep that in mind. And that's why Mathurin just simply playing well, but playing the same way isn't enough. Like it's going to have to be a lot of, stuff that he's shown he can do before, but not all the time, is going to be so fascinating to me this year.
Yeah, you went through a lot of the million questions that surround Bennedict Mathurin. No, it's great because as soon as you said
Reddit's also here to talk to everybody.
Yes, no, I'm just here to watch. It's great. You've mentioned millions of questions about Bennedict Mathurin, but there is a question about the millions. Like that's the crux of this whole entire thing, this whole summer, and every single day that those restricted free agents you mentioned do not get a new deal. That is another day that Bennedict Mathurin might drop his extension price down from whatever the number was coming into this offseason, whatever number it jumped up to when Miles left, and now trickling down before the extension deadline. Because, if you're him and you're looking at Colin Sexton just got traded with a pick for Yusuf Nurkic, which was
that's insane. Which was
nuts. Which was nuts. And then Norm Powell coming off of a career year, obviously 30s, but got traded for slow-mo Kevin Love in a second. It's like, okay, Cam Thomas is getting nothing. Jonathan Kuminga is getting nothing. You saw Jalen Green get $30 million, and that was trade fodder the second that it happened. And these are all like kind of okay comps for what Mathurin is as a player, or at least the context that he's in, the situation with the team, and like where he fits in. And so, if you're looking at all of that, and then you look at the opportunity ahead, I don't know how to parse that out. But then getting back to the court, I really wonder, as we're talking about the identity of a team without Tyrese Haliburton, the entire conversation surrounding Bennedict Mathurin has been how he fits with Haliburton. Haliburton's not here anymore. There's a non-zero chance.
Maybe he'll ball out, man.
There's a non-zero chance this ends up as a Bennedict Mathurin team.
Yeah.
Like, who else is? I mean, obviously there's Siakam, but I don't know. I think it's very possible that Mathurin comes in and has the biggest jump because he's the one. I feel like he's the one that can just assert himself the most. I feel like Siakam kind of is as steady as it gets. Nembhard plays a little bit more deliberate, and I imagine he's going to be doing a lot more table setting. Mathurin might just come in and just be the guy, which would be crazy for the way that this team has turned around. And I don't really know what that will look like because it started to get to a point last year where it was like, okay, the team kind of has to make a decision between Nesmith, Nembhard, and Mathurin because you can't start all three of them, but all three of them kind of should start. And if you're looking for a place to consolidate, it's right there. But now you are going to, you were scared to move off. Exactly, you're going to start all three, but you also didn't want to move off of any of them before you were ready to find out what happened. Now you're going to find out. So, the grass is not always greener. Just to shout out.
Oh God.
Sorry. Had to throw that in there. Anyways, no, very excited for Mathurin's season.
Everybody, quick break so we can talk about Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you are growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO that gives you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. You can check in on surprising insights and see things that you can track your spending in certain categories like takeout or subscriptions, all in one app, making your day-to-day management of your money even easier. And if you share finances with someone else, great. Shared accounts right on there so you can chase your financial goals, have all your accounts and spending in one place, and looking at everything and never be surprised. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off of your first year. Me too. So, and then the other part of like I mentioned, those three restricted free agents. He's better than Cam Thomas. Like that's not fair. I'm just bringing up the most high profile, I guess, restricted free agents. You know, we'll see what happens with Giddey. Maybe contractually that'll be the closest comp. I think situationally Kuminga is because even though Steph Curry is not hurt, like it's the same exact conversation in Golden State where it's like, Jonathan Kuminga, you are clearly great, good to great, whatever you want to say, at basketball, very clearly. Also, the Warriors play a certain way where some guys look great. Shout out Otto Porter, Sean Livingston, like Moses Moody plays well in that system. Like lots of guys have come in and out of there and figured out how to move the ball and move quick and be awesome. And some guys don't look so great.
Kelly Oubre,
Kuminga, guys come in and they think they're good fits and they're not. And in some ways that's like fine. That's how fit works in the NBA, but like that's the team that has to pay you. And restricted free agency is already unkind. And so I'll be keeping an eye on how that shakes out and what it looks like for Mathurin, because people always say, well, if he plays great and they can't afford him, sign and trade. It's like, well, that's really hard with these base year compensation restricted free agents. That's what the Warriors are potentially running into. Like it's still hanging. So I don't want to talk about the contract stuff too much because the answer for Mathurin's future contract stuff should be decided based on how he plays, right? And that's good. That is how it should be for most decisions. That's worked well for the Pacers. They keep winning the last 2 years, deep playoff runs, and they have paid all but one of their guys and kept them around. And I think that's smart. Like they all fit well. Most of them fit well on the Pacers and better on the Pacers than other teams. If Mathurin can prove that this year, great. They should keep him. We shouldn't even be talking about this. But the other part of that is the fit part, which is is their style going to be what their style is permanently? They've had games in the past where they win it because Mathurin and Siakam are so good and a slowed down style. Is that what they're going to look like this season? He's just it's so fascinating. It's not the year of the Mathurin because it's not, but like a lot of what this year is going to be about and a lot of this tone setting for 2 years from now will kind of be based on him to me. Okay, take me somewhere else.
Is Johnny Furphy just good?
Yes. Maybe.
Is Johnny Furphy just like in the rotation? And not to skip over Jarris Walker because that's the other guy.
Like what do Jarris first? But
the young guys, what? And ultimately, as I was thinking about this morning, my question is like, what is Rick Carlisle's tolerance going to be this season? Because there's really not an excuse for Jarris Walker and Johnny Furphy to not play like a decent amount.
So I got my first. I knew it was coming. I forget what sequence it was. I think it was the Furphy 3-steal dunk sequence before his crazy dunk. I got my first tweet reply from somebody that says, I'd play Furphy over Walker. And I was like, oh, man. We're full steam ahead on the Furphy trade. To be clear, if I were the Pacers, I would not do that.
No.
Start next season. I would absolutely not do that. And the case I would make is the same case I made for Jarris last year. And I've said this on a few shows in a row, which is like, if Furphy is guy 11, I think top 10 seems pretty settled for their rotation next year. Nembhard, Nesmith, Siakam, Jackson, Mathurin, and then McConnell, Shepard, Walker, Toppin, Huff is what I have typed down. We'll talk about the Jackson Huff part of this on the show later. That seems right to me. I know it's coming. They're like, well, I'd play Furphy over Shepard. Okay, well, great. Well, the Pacers have shown over years and years and years that they're not going to do that. And then the rest of the guys are all like question marky guys or young guys. Okay, so it seems obvious their top 10 is. But Furphy is pretty obviously then guy 11 outside of the center position. And the way their team is built the last couple of years was the same way with Walker. It's like if a two guard gets hurt, Nembhard can play the two some, and you can slide some stuff around, and then Furphy's your guy playing. Or if a 4 gets hurt, Walker can move up. Or if a 1 gets hurt, Furphy is like the 11th guy for like 3 or 4 different injury situations, and so he's gonna play more already. And I also wonder, like they said it last year. Like I think people remember when Rick Carlisle was like,
"Yep,
yeah, I think Johnny Furphy's going to be in our rotation like pretty soon." And I was like, what? Like this is the time he's like playing 10 games for the Mad Ants in a month. And I don't know, don't get me wrong. I get why he's saying it. I think Furphy's good. I think his nose for the ball has been obvious the whole time. But I was like, wow, that's quite the, shot.
Are you playing a 13-man rotation?
Yeah, right, exactly. And this is like, we didn't know Haliburton would be hard to turn or be gone. So it's like, man, what? But now it's like, okay, maybe they can put their money where their mouth is. And if you wanted to talk about what Furphy needed to show in Summer League to play, outside of making threes, it's like, that's it. That we've seen it. That's pretty close to what it is. So Jarris should, to be clear to that person, if you're listening to this, Jarris should be above him. Jarris has played well in real games last year. And even in the playoffs at times before he got hurt, like that guy should be playing. And if there's even a chance Jarris Walker is the dreamy 3-and-D wing you need for the Pacers, that guy should be playing. However, I need to figure out what Jarris is before he's extension eligible next summer. Sorry. Anyway. But Furphy, I agree. I have lots of questions about, is he ready for real games? He had that Nets game that still is like burned in my brain of like, he was so good. They started him in the second half. And I was like, yep, they should do that. Yep. He's one of the best 5 guys today. So maybe he's ready for it and he's filling out and doesn't look, he still looks young, but he doesn't look like he's 13 anymore. So
yeah,
I'm so intrigued.
I also don't really know why you would say Furphy over Walker. Like I get if you have to put them numerically, like somebody has to be over another. They're 2 completely different players. They can play completely different roles. Like you could maybe talk about Furphy versus Shepherd, but even that is more like guardy wing versus wingy wing. And so I just don't like. That's like, oh, you should play Jay Huff over. You should play Jay Huff over Ben Shepherd. Like, what are we talking? Those are not the same. But yeah,
I hope I get an out of context clip tomorrow that says Tony E says the Pacers should start Jay Huff over Siakam. Thank you, listeners, for appreciating sarcasm today.
Goodness gracious. But no, it's gonna. It's the tolerance. Like how many mistakes are they going to let these young players make? Because it's just like what you said. We're coming into this situation with Mathurin where year 4, we still don't really know what he is with the team, but we also don't really know what he is as an individual player. And you're heading into, now you're in extension negotiations and you're heading into his restricted free agency. You now have a year earlier of that with Jarris Walker, but you also have less information. And then you're obviously building that data, all those data points for Furphy in the same way. And so you kind of, I would want to see what each of those players look like without Haliburton, because that will give you a better, like obviously you aren't going to find players that are better without Haliburton that end up being worse with Haliburton. Like that's just not the kind of player that he is. And so I think every single thing, exactly like you said with Nembhard, exactly like you said with Mathurin, every single thing that these players can do without Haliburton will in some way be a net positive when Haliburton is back on the court, but they won't get opportunities to do that stuff except for this year. And so you really need to figure out what that's going to look like. And if Furphy can just get to the rim like he has been, that's such a huge change for this team, because Mathurin's really the only one that can just beat his guy and get to the rim like that. And I'm not saying that Furphy off the bounce is just going to be a go-to play, but if he can just beat the other team's 10th man, that's huge. That's a really big deal. And so I want to see what that looks like. And then Jarris too, like that. He deserved to be in the rotation. Like he deserved to be out there in playoff games that mattered. And that is not very common for young players, especially someone like him who has sometimes seemed a little spacey, but now seems like he was really impacting the game. So I'm so fascinated to see those. I don't want to say deep bench wings forwards because they shouldn't be deep bench, but that's kind of how the roster is going to shake out.
Yeah, my Jarris questions are just like, how good can you be now, man? Like you're in the rotation every day now. Mathurin is starting because Haliburton's gone. Congratulations, you are now guy number 10. You are playing every game. My questions about him aren't like new. You know what I mean? They're not like like a lot of the guys we're talking about today are like, this is new because of what happened in the offseason. Yeah, I guess Jarris is now in the rotation, which is new, but it's not that new. It's I just dude.
They're just a little bit louder,
man. Yeah, this is it. Like it's his career has been not like unfortunate. Like it stinks that he got drafted somewhere he couldn't play as much, right? That is unfortunate. So now you have like 1 year to like go ball and try to get paid.
Yeah.
But I don't have a lot of questions about it. I think I know what he's going to be good at. I think the Pacers would like him to be a better defender this year. All right, we've dodged it too much. Rhett, who do you think starting at center this year? I have my guess, but I want you to talk it out.
I think it's Isaiah Jackson.
I also think it's Isaiah Jackson, but I'm very intrigued by this because Isaiah, let's work backwards through the way the NBA works. Isaiah got paid the most. That's probably the reason I think that he's probably the starter. But the other part of this is he has been only on the Pacers. He knows their system pretty well. He's played with Pascal Siakam before. He's played with all those guys who started before. Like, okay, that familiarity matters. They clearly think he's good. They paid him a fully guaranteed 3-year deal.
Yep.
Okay, so that like the optics suggest the answer is Isaiah Jackson. I think thing two, I will say, Isaiah Jackson, I personally think is the best of their centers. Okay,
yes.
So like those two things in tandem, he should start.
Yes.
However, there was a lot of Pascal Siakam, hey, I fit really well with Miles chatter when he got to Indiana. And they happened to trade for a center who I would say is more comparable to Thomas Bryant on a talent level, but plays more like Miles Turner than Isaiah Jackson in Jay Huff, who, again, I think Isaiah Jackson is better than. But I'm like, I actually totally understand the case. They'd be like, yeah, we'd rather start the spacing 5 here. But we've also seen Caitlin Cooper's been all over pointing this out, like good synergy between Nembhard and Jackson before. I get the Jay Huff case, and I wonder if they would consider it because of that spacing element. But I also think it should be Jackson. And I have questions about every center on the team, maybe except Tony Bradley, because they're all new. What kind of? I mean, James Wiseman's new, as in they signed him this offseason. Same with Jackson, but like they're both coming off Achilles tears. Jay Huff is literally new to the team. I'm like, all of you, what are you? How are you going to do this year? What is your long-term outlook with the Pacers? Do you fit in this slowed-down environment? What do they care about you? I have questions about all of them, and it's very similar questions about every single one.
You missed some of my questions. So why are you on the Pacers right now? It's like that was one of the questions. That was my first question that I had. So that's the thing. That's the exact cycle that I went through. Is like Isaiah Jackson is just better. Like I don't think there's any question. They are far more invested in him than they are in anybody else on the roster. The number says so. The time that they've been with the organization says so. But they're also far more invested in Siakam and Nembhard and Mathurin and Nesmith. And if you are looking at the player who might be able to let those guys operate the most, that might be Jay Huff. So I understand it. But I think that Jay Huff will have to take that spot and it be just irrefutable either through camp or for the first couple weeks of or first couple games of preseason or first couple weeks of the season, that the spacing that he provides is real and optimizes the rest of the lineup and is more important than whatever it is that Isaiah Jackson brings to the table as a just around the rim on both sides of the floor, and just the relentlessness that he is going to play with in a way that we've said for such a long time no one else on the Pacers roster could really do. So those two, between Bradley and Wiseman, like I don't really get the James Wiseman thing, because I think taking a talent bet with Tyrese Haliburton is like, yeah, great. You've got pedigree of a, top pick, and obviously hasn't worked out a couple other places, but now you're not going to see the best out of James. I don't think Andrew Nembhard or TJ McConnell is going to get the best out of James Wiseman, but I guess you just have an extra center around. I don't really know, but
how many of his 6 minutes last year were with Haliburton? I know you don't know this off the top of your head. I want to look this up.
I think, didn't he only play the one stretch?
He played the one game and he played for like 5 minutes and they went really well for him, but I don't remember if he played who he was playing with.
I'm going to say all 5, because I imagine if
I would also think it was all 5.
Yeah.
You want
to talk about small sample size theater? We are. But if it's not, and it went really well, then shoot, maybe I get the signing. But anyway, yeah, I thought Tony Bradley was like decent in the playoffs, so I understand. And having a third string center where he is not coming off an Achilles injury, like that makes sense. But I don't really know. I guess it's options. So do you have the answer for?
The answer is 4 minutes.
4. Okay.
Haliburton, Neesmith, Nembhard, Siakam, Wiseman played. That's the starting 5 with Wiseman out there as Turner came out. And then it was Haliburton, Neesmith, McConnell, Siakam, Wiseman, and Haliburton, Mathurin, McConnell, Wiseman, Toppin. This happened less than 12 months ago in previous lineups. I'm like, this feels like an eternity ago.
Hey, if we kept going with those,
they mostly overlap. You were right to question that part. Yeah, like how does he feel for the guys? Because I actually understand this year Wiseman more than last year. I've explained this before, but just like this year will have more developmental undertones than last year. Bring in the young guy. I totally get that. Right? He's only 23, but he's coming off an Achilles tear. He's not playing in the same context that the Pacers were playing in last year, or probably will be playing in next year. Yeah, their whole center thing confusing. Is Tony Bradley going to be on the team? Is Enrique Freeman going to be on the team? What's happening? Who is the five? What is the fives? Can Isaiah Jackson play back-to-backs? Because the question with spacing with him, like Jay Huff is a better spacer because he can shoot, but like Isaiah Jackson is mobile and athletic, like from a vertical spacing perspective, enough that he's not a spacing suck. He's not like causing black hole problems. Mm-hmm. But if he's not as bouncy, it's like, is he totally going to be ignored in the paint? I wouldn't think so, but I'll be curious how much he can provide the rest of that group. But like lots of lob threat centers are out there and don't just like kill team spacing. So he's still got to be mobile and alert and all that kind of stuff. Do you have anyone else that we need to get to today? Those are I think all of my biggest ones.
What does Obi Toppin look like without Haliburton setting him up?
Ooh. Yeah, he was their sixth man a lot, huh? They did overlap a lot. What percentage of his minutes came with Haliburton? I should have put a lot more Haliburton filters into the search bar before we started.
I'm going to guess it's like 70%.
70%, huh?
That's my guess. Cool. Because like the whole point with Obi Toppin is just like a force in transition, knock down shots. But we saw in the playoffs when he had to do stuff for himself, it was not always pretty. Very, very, you didn't know what you were going to get with Obi Toppin putting the ball on the floor, trying to do stuff. And if he doesn't have as easy of a life, he will never look better than he will never have more value than what he does right now. I don't think. And so I'm not suggesting anything about that, but
I'm glad you brought him up. So to answer your question, 853 of his 1545 minutes last year, just 55.2% came with Haliburton. So close to an even split. He did pair well with those second unit groups. I'm glad you brought him up because I didn't think I'd get to this point on this podcast already, but whatever. I was messaging somebody about this the other day. We just talked about who the Pacers starting center should be. Is it possible the answer is Obi Toppin?
It shouldn't be.
I don't think so either. But if you actually ask me right now, like we ran through the options of Huff, Jackson, Wiseman, whatever. If you actually ask me, like, who's the best center on the Pacers right now, is the answer Obi Toppin to that? Maybe.
Is the answer Obi Toppin without Tyrese Haliburton?
Yeah, that's a different question. That is a different.
That's because that I think is the question.
But like, what is the point of trading for Huff and signing Jackson if Obi Toppin's starting at the 5? Like the indications are not that that's going to be the case, obviously.
Let's get 4 centers and then start someone else. Right.
So I was talking to somebody about that. Like he did play at the 5 a good amount, and especially in like certain playoff situations, they clearly trust it. So like, is it possible to me he's their best 5 or he's their closing 5 or he plays? Yeah, it's totally possible to me. But you're right to see. It's interesting with him because there's a lot of guys who are clearly worse without Haliburton. But like, who is the most impacted by it? He's probably in the top 2 or 3 guys, you would say.
Yeah, I don't know who else would be more impacted. Like
maybe Neesmith, probably not though.
I don't, because I think Neesmith is spacing regardless. Yeah,
exactly.
So
you're probably right. The answer would have been Miles Turner, but
that I wasn't going to do it.
If you didn't know.
Hey, wait, he is.
Yes, the very competitive Bucks.
Yes, yeah.
How many press conference quotes have we referenced on? That's 3. How many more can we get in?
It depends on if we're complaining about me being back on the podcast or not.
We'll stop. 3's plenty. Yeah, you're probably right. Obi's probably number 1. And that's why that question about center, I was like, I guess that's interesting. Most of the other guys on the team, not like obviously it's a weird year. Their context of the year completely changed. So there's questions about everybody in some ways, but like at least it's more straightforward. Like, just be better doing this or do that or whatever. You're going to be playing a little bit more in this context. But the guys that we talked about today, I think we got to everybody that I was like, I have legitimately huge this season questions and like, long-term team building cap projection questions about you, what you're going to do for the Pacers and what that will look like. And guess what? These could change if they do other stuff in the offseason. There's still, today's the 15th that we're talking, which is the Bradley Beal big check hits his wallet day. Like the offseason's still churning a little bit, right? So we'll see if this is true of the Pacers team, but I think their roster clearly is built in a way that makes sense for the coming season. It makes sense for evaluating the talent in the way that they need to this year. Rhett, thank you for the time on this lovely. I almost said good morning. I've never said good morning to somebody I've been recording with. Where can people find you and the things you yap about when it comes to the NBA and the Pacers and Johnny Furphy dunking all over people?
You can find me on X, Twitter, Rhett_Bauer. I will definitely be on there looking for that Bradley Beal notification to bail out the Bucks for the crazy moves that they've made, but I know it's likely he's not going there. So I'll try to keep some Pacers stuff coming out.
Good times. Pacers don't play till Thursday, so tomorrow's show, we'll see. I'll probably have a guest, and we'll talk about lots of off-season fun stuff. But this is that time of the year, folks. Free agency's winding down. Summer league's almost over. It's time for the let's pull deep in the bag. People have messaged me about various things they'd like to talk about on this podcast. Now is the time to force them to do that. Rhett, thank you for the time. Everybody, thank you for listening. Back tomorrow talking more Pacers. Till then, have a wonderful day.